What if the place that once symbolized family unity slowly became the reason a family grew apart? For years, fans of the reality series Little People, Big World believed the future of the famous Roloff family farm was already written. The land that had been the backdrop for countless memories, celebrations, and milestones seemed destined to stay in the family for generations. Many viewers assumed that one day, the next generation, especially Zach Roloff, would take over the property his father, Matt Roloff, spent decades building from the ground up. But recently, something unexpected happened. In a surprisingly candid moment, Tori Roloff revealed that she and her husband Zach are definitely not interested in buying the family farm anymore. For longtime fans, the statement came as a shock. After all, Roloff Farms has always been the heart of the family's story. It's where the children grew up, where traditions were created, and where millions of viewers first connected with the Roloff family. So what changed? Why did Zach and Tori walk away from something that once seemed like their future? And what does this decision mean for the legacy Matt Roloff built, and for the future of Roloff Farms itself? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the story behind that decision, exploring the history, the disagreements, and the emotional moments that ultimately led Zach and Tori to close that chapter of their lives. For years, fans who watched Little People, Big World believed the future of the farm would remain within the family. The idea that one of the next generation Roloffs would step into a leadership role seemed almost inevitable. After all, the property had become one of the most recognizable locations on reality television. At the center of that legacy was Roloff Farms, the iconic property created and developed by Matt Roloff and Amy Roloff in Oregon. As the years passed, viewers watched the Roloff children grow up on the farm. They saw birthdays celebrated in the backyard, family projects taking shape across the land, and the famous pumpkin season that turned the property into a major attraction each fall. Because of that long history, many fans assumed that, when the time came, the next chapter of the farm would involve one of the children continuing the tradition. Among the siblings, Zach Roloff often appeared to be the most closely tied to that future. Over the years, he spent a significant amount of time working on the property and participating in farm activities. His connection to the land was something viewers frequently noticed. And when he married Tori Roloff, the idea of the couple eventually taking over the farm became an even more common assumption among fans. Many imagined that their children would grow up surrounded by the same fields, buildings, and traditions that Zach had experienced during his childhood. The possibility seemed like a natural continuation of the Roloff family story, a new generation carrying forward something their parents had spent decades building. But reality turned out to be far more complicated. Behind the scenes, conversations about the future of the farm slowly became more serious. Discussions about ownership, responsibilities, and financial arrangements began to take place within the family. What might have once seemed like a straightforward transition gradually turned into a series of negotiations. As those discussions continued, differences in expectations started to surface. The situation became more emotional than many fans realized at the time. Decisions involving family property can often be complex, especially when personal history and financial realities are deeply intertwined. Eventually, those private conversations led to a turning point. The idea that Zach Roloff and Tori Roloff might one day take over Roloff Farms began to fade. What once felt like an almost certain future started to look less and less likely. And as the details slowly became public, fans of Little People, Big World realized that the future of the farm and the relationships within the family might be heading in a very different direction than anyone had expected. What followed was a series of decisions that would reshape not only the future of the property, but also the dynamics within the Roloff family itself. For many fans of Little People, Big World, the story of the Roloff family is inseparable from one unforgettable place, Roloff Farms. Long before the cameras arrived, the property already held the beginning of what would become the family's legacy. In the early days, the land was far from the well-known attraction it is today. When Matt Roloff and Amy Roloff first purchased the property outside Hillsboro, Oregon, it was simply a piece of farmland with potential. The couple had a vision for what the land could become, but turning that vision into reality required years of hard work, creativity, and persistence. Matt, known for his big ideas and imaginative projects, quickly began transforming the property into something unique. Over time, the once ordinary farmland started to evolve into a space filled with elaborate structures, creative play areas, and attractions that reflected Matt's personality. Treehouses, pirate ships, castles, bridges, and Western-style buildings began appearing across the property. Each project added a new layer of character to the land. For Matt, the farm wasn't just about farming crops. It was about creating experiences. Meanwhile, Amy focused on building a warm and welcoming home environment for the family. Together, Matt and Amy balanced their efforts to grow both the property and their family. As their children, including Zach Roloff, Jeremy Roloff, Molly Roloff, and Jacob Roloff, grew up on the farm, the land naturally became the center of their childhood. For the Roloff kids, the farm was more than just where they lived. It was their playground, their adventure park, and the backdrop to countless memories. Summers were spent exploring the property, building forts, playing in the fields, and helping with farm chores. What might have felt like ordinary family life to them would later become something millions of viewers would watch on television. Everything changed when the family's story became the focus of the reality series Little People, Big World. When the show premiered on TLC in 2006, audiences were introduced not only to the Roloff family, but also to the farm itself. Very quickly, Roloff Farms became almost like another member of the cast. Many episodes of the show centered around life on the property, family projects, celebrations, and everyday moments that took place across the fields and buildings Matt had created. The farm wasn't just a setting. It was the stage where much of the Roloff family's story unfolded. One of the most important traditions that helped define the farm was pumpkin season. Every autumn, thousands of visitors traveled to the property to experience the famous pumpkin patch and seasonal attractions. What began as a small local activity gradually grew into a massive event that attracted families from all over the region. Pumpkin season became a huge part of the farm's identity. Visitors could take wagon tour across the property, explore the elaborate play structures Matt had built, and pick out pumpkins directly from the fields. The event turned the farm into a lively destination filled with laughter, crowds, and festive energy. Over the years, pumpkin season also became a central storyline on Little People, Big World. Viewers watched as the entire family worked together to prepare for the busy season, organizing tour, welcoming guests, and keeping the farm running smoothly during its most demanding weeks of the year. The event showcased the teamwork within the family while also highlighting the scale of what the farm had become. For many fans, watching pumpkin season each year became a tradition in itself. As the show continued, audiences began to develop a deep emotional connection to the property. The farm was where birthdays were celebrated, milestones were reached, and important family moments unfolded. It was where the Roloff children grew up, where friendships formed, and where the family built the memories that defined their story. Because viewers had watched these moments for so many years, the farm started to represent something larger than just land or business. It symbolized family history. Many longtime fans believed that Roloff Farms would eventually remain in the Roloff family for generations. As the children grew older and started families of their own, viewers often imagined that one of them, perhaps Zach Roloff or Jeremy Roloff, would one day take over the property and continue the tradition. The idea of the next generation running the farm felt like a natural continuation of the story. After all, the land had been built through years of effort by Matt Roloff and Amy Roloff. It had become the heart of Little People, Big World, and a place where the family's most important memories lived. For many viewers, the thought that the farm might one day leave the family seemed almost impossible. Because in the eyes of fans, The story of the Roloffs and the story of the farm had always been one and the same. As the years passed and the children of the Roloff family grew older, many fans began wondering what the future of the famous farm would look like. For viewers who had spent years watching the show, the idea seemed almost obvious. Someday the next generation would take over. And when people talked about that future, one name came up more than any other: Zach Roloff. Throughout many seasons of Little People, Big World, Zach appeared to have a deep and personal connection to the property. Unlike some of the other siblings who eventually moved farther away or pursued different careers, Zach seemed closely tied to the lifestyle that the farm represented. Viewers watched him grow up on the land, play on the fields, and take part in the yearly pumpkin seasons that had become such a major tradition at Roloff Farms. For many fans, those moments created a powerful sense that the farm wasn't just a place where Zach grew up. It was a place where his future might unfold as well. Over time, the idea that Zach might one day take over the property became more than just speculation. It turned into a recurring topic among fans of the series. Part of that expectation came from the history of the farm itself. The property had been built piece by piece over decades by Zach's father, Matt Roloff, alongside his mother, Amy Roloff. What started as simple land eventually grew into something far more meaningful, a destination filled with creative attractions, family memories, and traditions that thousands of visitors came to experience every year. Because of that long history, many viewers naturally assumed the next chapter of the farm's story would stay within the family. And Zach often seemed like the most likely person to continue that legacy. Throughout different episodes of the show, Zach spoke about the farm not just as a childhood home, but as a place that held emotional meaning for him. He understood the effort that had gone into building it and recognized the role it played in the family's identity. Fans also noticed that Zach frequently participated in farm activities. During pumpkin season, one of the busiest and most important times of the year, he could often be seen helping visitors, interacting with guests, and supporting the events that made the farm so popular. Those moments made it easy for viewers to imagine a future where Zach stepped into a larger role. There was also another reason fans believed he might eventually take over the farm. Zach had begun building a family of his own. When he and his wife, Tori Roloff, started raising their children, many viewers thought the farm might once again become the center of a new generation of memories. The idea of Zach's kids growing up on the same land where he had spent his childhood felt like a natural continuation of the Roloff story. For longtime fans of the show, that possibility carried a strong emotional appeal. It would mean that the traditions viewers had watched for years, pumpkin season, family gatherings, and life on the farm, could continue with a new generation. And within the Roloff family itself, conversations about the future of the property did occasionally surface. While those discussions were not always shown in full detail, there were moments when the idea of passing the farm down to the children was mentioned. The possibility seemed realistic enough that fans began treating it almost like an eventual certainty. After all, family farms are often passed down through generations. It's a tradition that carries deep meaning, not just financially, but emotionally. For a place like Roloff Farms, which had become such a huge part of the family's story, the idea of the next generation continuing that legacy felt especially powerful. And because Zach had grown up with the farm playing such a central role in his life, many viewers believed he would naturally want to keep that tradition alive. But as time would eventually show, expectations and reality don't always follow the same path. While fans had imagined one future for the farm, the actual decisions that unfolded behind the scenes would turn out to be far more complicated than anyone expected. And those complications would eventually lead to one of the most talked-about family disagreements in the history of the Roloff story. The negotiations that changed everything, 25-0040-00. For years, many viewers believed that one day the future of the farm would pass to the next generation. Among the Roloff children, Zach Roloff often seemed like the most likely person to continue the legacy. As someone who grew up on the property and spent countless hours helping during pumpkin season, Zach had a deep connection to the land. Fans had watched him work on the farm since he was young, and many believed that one day he would own a portion of it and continue the traditions started by his parents. At one point, that possibility appeared to become very real. Zach eventually approached his father, Matt Roloff, about the idea of purchasing part of the property. From the outside, the situation seemed simple. The farm had always been seen as a place that would stay within the family, and many assumed that a deal between father and son would naturally work out. But as conversations began, things quickly became more complicated than anyone expected. Reports from the family later revealed that the negotiations involved many details, including pricing, conditions, and how the land would be divided. While Zach hoped to secure a portion of the farm where he could raise his family and continue the tradition, Matt had his own vision for the future of the property. The difference in expectations soon became clear. For Zach, the farm represented childhood memories, family history, and a place where he imagined his own children growing up. For Matt, the property was also a business and a major investment that he had spent decades building. Because of that, both sides approached the negotiation from very different perspectives. As discussions continued, it became clear that they were struggling to find common ground. Some conversations reportedly became difficult, with disagreements forming around the price of the land and the terms of the sale. What Zach believed was a fair opportunity to continue the family legacy didn't fully align with the way Matt viewed the situation as the owner and creator of the property. This gap between expectation and reality created emotional tension. For viewers who had followed the family for years on Little People, Big World, the shift was noticeable. The farm had always been presented as a symbol of unity, a place where the family gathered for holidays, celebrations, and the famous pumpkin seasons. But now, it was becoming the center of a serious disagreement. As the negotiations continued, it eventually became clear that a deal was not going to happen. For Zach, this outcome was deeply disappointing. The idea of raising his children on the same land where he grew up had been something he once imagined as part of his future. For Matt, the decision was tied to the long-term vision he had for the farm and the financial realities of maintaining such a large property. Unfortunately, the situation didn't just end as a simple business disagreement. The emotional impact began to affect their relationship. Fans started noticing moments where the connection between father and son seemed strained. Conversations that once appeared relaxed and easy now carried a different tone. The warmth that viewers were used to seeing between them sometimes felt replaced by distance. For a family that had shared so much of their lives publicly, the tension was difficult for fans to watch. Many viewers expressed sadness that the farm, the place that had brought the family together for so many years, had now become a source of conflict. And while neither side wanted things to turn out this way, the failed negotiations marked a turning point in the story of the Roloff family. It was a moment that changed expectations about what the future of the farm might look like. More importantly, it changed the direction of Zach's life. Because after realizing that owning part of the property was no longer a realistic possibility, he and his wife began thinking about a different path forward. Moving away from the farm 40-0050-00. After the negotiations fell through, Zach Roloff and Tori Roloff made a decision that surprised many fans. Instead of continuing to live close to the property where Zach had spent most of his life, the couple decided it was time to move away and create a new chapter for their family. Leaving the farm wasn't just about distance. It represented a major emotional shift. For years, the farm had been a central part of their lives, not only because of family history, but also because of its connection to Little People, Big World. The property had been the backdrop for countless memories, from childhood moments to major family milestones. But now, Zach and Tori were focusing on something different. Their priority had become building a stable and happy life for their children. As parents, they wanted a home environment where their kids could grow up with space, comfort, and a sense of normalcy away from the ongoing tensions surrounding the farm. The move also represented a fresh start. By stepping away from the property and the complicated family discussions tied to it, Zach and Tori were able to focus on what mattered most to them: their marriage, their children, and their future as a family. For Tori Roloff, this shift meant embracing a life that was centered more on family routines, parenting, and creating everyday memories with their kids. And for Zach, it meant redefining his identity outside of the farm, where he had spent so much of his life. Instead of continuing to hold onto a vision that no longer seemed possible, he began focusing on building something new for his own family. Fans noticed that while the decision may have been difficult at first, it also seemed to bring a sense of clarity. Stepping away from the farm allowed Zach and Tori to create their own traditions and shape their own future without feeling tied to expectations about what should happen next. In many ways, the move symbolized something important. It showed that while the farm had played a huge role in Zach's past, it didn't have to define his entire future. By creating a life elsewhere, he and Tori were proving that the next chapter of their story could be built on their own terms. And although the farm will always remain part of the Roloff family's history, Zach and Tori's decision demonstrated that sometimes moving forward means choosing a different path entirely. Around this point in the story, the conversation about the future of the farm took a very direct turn when Tori Roloff decided to address the topic publicly. For a long time, fans had continued to wonder if the situation might eventually change. Even after the earlier disagreements surrounding the property, many viewers still hoped that somehow the next generation would find a way to return to the land that had been such an important part of the family's life. But during a candid moment, Tori finally spoke openly about where things truly stand. And her message was very clear. According to Tori, the idea that she and her husband might someday purchase the farm is simply not something they are considering anymore. She explained that they are definitely not interested in buying the property. For many longtime followers of Little People, Big World, that statement felt like a major moment. For years, viewers had watched the farm serve as the center of the family's story. The land had been built and developed by Matt Roloff and Amy Roloff, and it became one of the most recognizable locations on the show. From pumpkin seasons to family gatherings, countless memories were created there. And because of that history, many people naturally believed the farm would eventually stay within the family through the next generation. In particular, fans often assumed that Zach Roloff might one day take on that responsibility. He had grown up on the property and spent years helping with farm activities. On the show, viewers saw him deeply connected to the place where so many childhood memories were made. That emotional connection made many people believe he would be the one to carry the legacy forward. But as time passed and negotiations surrounding the property became more complicated, the situation began to shift. By the time Tori spoke publicly about the issue, it was clear that she and Zach had already spent a long time thinking about their future. And her comments suggested that the couple had reached a place of acceptance. Instead of continuing to focus on what might have been, they had decided to move forward and concentrate on the life they are building for themselves and their children. In her explanation, Tori did not sound bitter or angry. Instead, her words reflected a sense of closure. She made it clear that they have moved on emotionally from the idea of owning the farm. Over time, they have built a new life in a different place, one that reflects their own priorities as a family. For them, the focus now is on raising their children, creating new traditions, and building a future that feels right for them. And while the farm will always be part of their history, it is no longer something they see as part of their future plans. That honesty resonated with many fans. Some viewers said they understood why the couple made this decision. After everything that had happened, They believed it made sense for Zach and Tori to step away from the situation and focus on what brings them peace. For those fans, the decision showed maturity and emotional growth. They saw it as a sign that the couple was choosing stability and happiness for their family, rather than continuing a complicated and potentially stressful situation. However, not everyone reacted the same way. For other longtime followers of the show, the news carried a sense of sadness. The idea that the next generation might not take over the farm felt like the closing of a chapter that many people had imagined for years. Because for fans of Little People, Big World, the farm was never just a piece of property. It represented the heart of the Roloff family's story. Seeing the possibility of that legacy continuing through the children had always been a comforting thought for viewers who had watched the show for so long. So when Tori explained that she and Zach were definitely not interested in buying it, some fans felt that it symbolized the end of that dream. Still, others pointed out that family legacies do not always have to follow the exact path people expect. Sometimes, the next generation creates a different kind of legacy, one built in a new place and shaped by new experiences. And in many ways, that seems to be exactly what Zach and Tori are doing now. They are focusing on their children, their home, and the life they are building away from the farm. The memories they made there will always remain part of their story. But the future they are creating is entirely their own. The story of Little People, Big World has always been about more than what viewers saw on television. For years, fans watched the Roloff Farms become the heart of the family's story, a place where childhood memories were made, traditions were built, and milestones unfolded in front of millions of viewers around the world. At the center of that journey were Matt Roloff and Amy Roloff, who spent decades transforming the land into something truly special. What began as a simple property eventually became a beloved destination known for its famous pumpkin seasons and family-friendly attractions. Over time, the farm became deeply connected to the identity of the Roloff family and the show itself. For a long time, many viewers believed that the next chapter of the farm's story would involve the next generation stepping in. In particular, fans often assumed that Zach Roloff would eventually take on that responsibility. After all, audiences had watched him grow up there, work on the property, and share a strong emotional connection to the place that shaped so much of his life. However, as time passed, plans and expectations began to shift. Conversations about the future of the farm became complicated, and it became clear that the path forward might not be as simple as fans once believed. Eventually, both Zach and his wife, Tori Roloff, began to focus more on building their own life and creating new opportunities for their family outside of the farm. Tori later made it clear that purchasing the property is no longer something they see in their future. Instead of holding onto old expectations, the couple appears to be concentrating on raising their children and building a life that reflects their current priorities. And in many ways, that decision reflects something that happens in families everywhere. Sometimes the dreams that once seemed certain change as people grow, circumstances evolve, and new paths open up. That doesn't erase the history of the farm or the important role it played in the Roloff family's story. The memories made at Roloff Farms will always be part of their journey, and fans who followed the show for so many years will likely always associate that land with the moments that made the series so memorable. But the future of the Roloff family is still unfolding. Whether it's new projects, new homes, or simply focusing on family life, Zach and Tori appear determined to build a future that works best for them and their children. And while that future may not include owning the farm, it still represents the next chapter of their story. As the years go on, fans of Little People, Big World will undoubtedly continue watching to see what happens next, both for the Roloff family and for the farm that played such a huge role in their lives. Because even when one chapter ends, another one is always beginning. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.